was growing up, I loved superhero toys. I play with them constantly. I always had a lot of fun with them. But there was that one special toy that really caught my attention. It was Spider-Man from the Marvel Superheroes Cosmic Defenders line made by Toy Biz way back when. It might not look like much or seem like much now, but G.I. Joe style articulation on a 5-inch action figure back then was unheard of, much less a superhero action figure. And the wrist, ankle, and mid-torso articulation? This thing was incredible. It was my favorite toy because it was the first time I played with a Spider-Man that felt like it'd been pulled directly from the pages of the comics. Before this, Toy Biz's figures were all very simple, with a maximum 7 points of articulation, which was an obvious carryover from Kenner's Superpowers line. Believe it or not, Toy Biz got their start making Batman movie toys and DC superheroes, which were mostly bad reproductions of Kenner's Superpowers line with really shitty plastics and even shittier paint jobs. After multi-jointed Spider-Man came out, it became something of a trademark for every line featuring Spider-Man to have a multi-pulsable Spider-Man in it, because it seemed kind of an obvious action feature, right? In the comics, Spider-Man's known as a very flexible person, and he kind of leaps around all over the place. He's very quick. So it seemed like a very obvious action feature to have him be multi-posable. It seemed a very Spider-Man thing to do. So the Spider-Man animated series toy line had a multi-posable Spider-Man, the movie toy line had a multi-posable Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man Classics had several multi-posable Spider-Mans. Spider-Man Classics is the line where everything really changed. Before that, there was a Blade action figure with toe articulation that I read about in an issue of Toy Fair way back when. And that could be another important precursor to the Marvel Legends line. And there might be others that I'm forgetting. But, Spider-Man Classics is definitely where everything absolutely changed. Having a Spider-Man with 30 points of articulation wasn't such hot potatoes at this point. I mean, the movie had already done it. It was fucking incredible, but it had already been done. The difference here was that with Spider-Man Classics, every Spider-Man in the line had 30 points of articulation. Regular Spidey, 30 points. Black Costume Spidey, 30 points. Battle Damage Spidey, 30 points. Scarlet Spider, 30 points. 2009 Spidey, 30 points. And not just Spidey, but Daredevil too! You would expect to see these toys going for $30 at your local comic book shop, not for $6.50 at your local Target. How was Toy Biz making any money? They had to have been losing money. The only downside was that the villains were still lacking a bit of articulation, even if they were very highly detailed. For reference, check out this Rhino from the Spider-Man Classics line. Obviously, it's got a lot of articulation, but in some areas, it's a lot more statue than it is toy. Marvel Legends was something I was taken surprised by. I never had any of the Spider-Man Classics toys when they came out. I do have Rhino, which we just saw, but I didn't get him until years and years after the fact. So, one Christmas morning in 2002, when I opened up those presents and saw Captain America and Iron Man, I knew I had something special on my hands, and boy, I was taken by surprise. I had heard of them, but they really weren't on my radar at the time. My mom, though, went to the store, and she knew how much I loved the old toys, and how much I loved the comics. And she said to herself, I bet he'd love these. And she was right. So check this out, guys. Iron Man has 30 points of articulation, and so does Captain America. It's impressive, like the double knee and elbow articulation and the wrist and hand articulation, but some of it's kind of weird too, like the block joints in Iron Man's shoulder blades and the stiff shoulder joints themselves. The torso articulation is pretty useless too, because you can't really move at the torso, so I don't really know why it's included. The best thing about Iron Man is that you can pose him to do a repulsor blast, which is his main attack in the comic books. So the worst part about the figure is the round disc on his hips are solid plastic, so they block hip movement to the side. The mask is removable, which is cool, but it doesn't stay on super well. But I can't criticize it too hard because it looks a lot better than anything we'd ever had before this, and it also kind of looks a lot better than a lot of stuff that we got after this. As long as you don't move him around too much, it's really not much of an issue. The paint detail is pretty light compared to future releases, but it does make the figure look very much like he did in the comic books from the 70s. There's some shifts on the yellows from yellow to a more orangish looking yellow, and it does look like there's not much shading on the reds. There's a little bit if you look closely. Mostly though, the red seems to have this glittery kind of sheen about it that's really hard to capture on camera. Also, the gold on the chest looks a little strange when you really look at it for a long period of time, but when you're not messing with the figure too much, it doesn't really draw much attention. And considering that the repulsor blast, or the blast on his hands that you see there, they're the same color gold as on the chest, it doesn't look like it's terribly out of place or anything. And he's even got this cool Stark Industries satellite base that you can put him on if you want to mount him on the wall as a statue or something. All the Marvel Legends had this base initially. Not this base specifically, but a base, before they transitioned to Build-A-Figures during Series 9 with Galactus. They don't really do anything, the bases, except provide a backdrop for your figure. Captain America has more or less the same articulation as Iron Man. The key difference being that his hand has a grip that allows him to hold his shield. Sort of like a trademark feature, kind of like Iron Man's hands allow him to do his repulsor blast. So when Captain America's hand is closed, it really does look like he's holding his shield if you put it on his arm. And his other hand, though, allows him to kind of salute. I know the thumb is kind of sticking out a little bit, but still, you can kind of do it. And if you want to pose him like that, you can. His armor will allow him to do that. His torso articulation is more usable than Iron Man's. At least it twists. Iron Man doesn't do anything, but Captain America does move. Although Cap does have this weird neck articulation that's utterly useless. The head swivels, and then the neck also moves at the shoulders. It's really weird. I don't know why they decided to do that, because it doesn't really look natural at all. The big accessory on Captain America, of course, is his shield, and the shield looks simple, but boy, it delivers. The detail on his chainmail is pretty great. It's kind of like a modern kind of mesh appearance. On older Captain America figures, they used to depict his chainmail using texture, so I kind of miss that, but even so, this still looks pretty cool. Otherwise, the sculpt really does look great. This is Captain America. He's jacked, but not too jacked. He's got that chiseled jawline. And much like Iron Man, the red plastic on him looks kind of bare. I'm not sure that I really see all that much detail in the red plastics. I might be missing something here, but I don't think so. And the blues don't really look like they've got much paint detail on them either. So it's kind of bare bones in that regard, but again, he looks very much like he was pulled from a comic book, so he still looks good even if there isn't a heck of a lot of detail on him. The base that comes with Captain America is just a pile of rubble with a wall on the backside and an American flag planted in the rubble.
And it's kind of a cool looking base. It's not as cool as the Stark Industries satellite that came with Iron Man, but this distinctly has a World War II type feel, like Captain America just set foot in the battlefield and the battle has been won. And for that I have to give it credit because it really evokes that kind of feel. And I like that. It feels good. It feels about right for Captain America considering the era that he's from in the comics. So it's a good base. It feels about as sturdy as the Stark Industries satellite does. Although the flag does feel a little bit flimsy, and Captain America is a little difficult to get standing straight up when you pose him on the pile of rubble. I had a hard time getting him to stand up straight. I don't know why, but I just could not get him to do it. Probably has something to do with the arrangement of the pegs on the base. Marvel Legends also came with a comic book unique to the character that you got in the package. So, of course, Captain America comes with an origin story retold by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And, you know, we start off here with Captain America and Bucky doing their thing. They're kicking butt. They're going to take out the Germans because, you know, Cap was around in World War II. We got a Germany here who's, you know, swearing in German because, you know, that passed the mustard back in late 60s, 68, 69, whatever. You see some ads here, that's cool. And then here Cap is retelling his story to Nick Fury, who is kind of apathetic toward the whole thing, hilariously so. And there's a Spider-Man ad, because, you know, Toy Biz was making Spider-Man the movie toys, and over here we got more of Cap's story as he's going in. You know, he was trying to apply for the army and they weren't having any of it, and then he got recruited for the super soldier serum program, and well, you know, Stan Lee being Stan Lee, you gotta admire his consistency. He would subject Steve Rogers to some gamma rays or whatever rays. They were like Vita rays, I don't know. It's silly. It's really silly, but it's a fun comic anyway. And Iron Man came with a story that revolved around Doctor Doom. Is really weird, but it was kind of interesting. I wanted to like this comic. It's just that it's not the most representative comic of Iron Man. I don't know why they chose this one. Like, why didn't they choose literally any other Iron Man story with a representative villain? And, you know, we got Tony Stark here going into board meetings, and they're talking about how Latveria wants to order their products, but oh no, there's an embargo on Latveria, and it's ridiculous. Iron Man here is doing his thing. He's trying to keep Latveria from getting his products because he knows Doctor Doom's going to come and grab them, and it's so silly. And he does. He comes in, and then we got Tony Stark with customs crossing action and over in Latveria because Doctor Doom's no longer the monarch there, but they want Tony Stark to act as an agent against the monarch, and then, or the ex-monarch rather, and then Doctor Doom and Iron Man inevitably fight, and Iron Man gets owned pretty hard by Doctor Doom, all things considered, and then eventually Doom's henchman owns both of them. And, you know, we got the whole line on the back of the comic here. Notice that Captain America has a completely different comic.
Unfortunately, I never had Hulk or Toad from this line. Why? I don't know. You gotta keep in mind, I was a kid, and I really didn't have any income of my own going, so I was kinda at the mercy of my mom. But she probably wouldn't have objected to getting them for me if I had just asked, because there were only 4 figures in the line, and they weren't terribly expensive at that point in time. I do remember her telling me that she couldn't find Hulk, for one, and that Toad was impossible to find. So, there is that. I guess it was just a case of unavailability. And looking back, you kind of have to laugh about that now, because that was pretty much an ongoing thing for the entire time Toy Biz made Marvel Legends. So, action figures that were impossible to find. God, Toy Biz.
Hulk is huge, like he should be, but he's bigger than any other Hulk figure before this. One of the great things about the Marvel Legends line is the scale. So, Hulk here is bigger than most Marvel characters because he's that way in the comic books. And of course, he's bigger than Captain America and Iron Man. I know I said I don't have Hulk from the Marvel Legends line, but I do have a Hulk that used the same sculpt from a Target exclusive figure that was based on the movie Hulk from 2003 or 2002, I don't remember exactly when. But here's the movie Hulk that was released in comparison with Iron Man and Captain America. And as you can see, the size difference between Hulk and Captain America and Iron Man is pretty big. His green color is really dull though. It's kind of a disappointing look against the brighter colors of Captain America and Iron Man. I read that there were a couple of versions of Hulk released at the time. One with bendy fingers and one with hinge joint hands. The bendy ones look weird to me, to say the least. There's less articulation on Hulk than Iron Man or Captain America. Unlike the two of them, Hulk only has 20 points of articulation, I read. And he doesn't really have toe articulation or double-jointed knees and elbows. Probably it's to make the figure more stable because he's so large. At least that's what I'm guessing. The shouting face on his sculpt looks kinda odd. It doesn't have that realistic look about it like Iron Man or Captain America have on their face sculpts. Toad is the black sheep of the line. When you think Marvel Legends, Toad is not the first person to come to mind. He's an odd choice for the launch line, but I remember even looking at the back of the box when I got Iron Man and Captain America that one Christmas day and thinking to myself, Toad? Really? Yeah, I know. He's an odd choice for the launch line. But on the other hand, introducing him among popular characters is a good way to get him more exposure, that's for sure. Toad is really more statue than toy, I think. He doesn't have much articulation, he only has 10 points, and it's kind of all in the shoulders. He looks good though. It's one of the best and most detailed sculpts in the line. It's very dark looking though, like they added too much detail and tried to make him too realistic. I know I'm using the term, realistic in a loose sense since Toad here literally has a toad in his hand. I heard that the Toad figure was supposed to be part of a 2-pack with Movie Toad and not actually part of the Marvel Legends line. And that does make sense, since he doesn't jive with the aesthetic of the line. He'd still be cool to have, but he's kind of a big letdown compared to the other 3 figures we have in Series 1 here. What's really wild about Series 1 here is that the sculpts for each of these characters is completely unique. And that's not something that's necessarily true as we go further along the way in the Marvel Legends line. If you look close, you'll notice that each figure is their own thing. Like Iron Man has his own thing going on, and Captain America's got his own sculpt going on. Even down to the arms. One is uniquely Iron Man, and one is uniquely Captain America. Captain America and Iron Man, their sculpts really don't have anything in common, other than the articulation that they decided to put in there. And even then, Captain America doesn't have the weird hinged shoulder joints that Iron Man does. I really believe that this is something they were going for initially, to make each Marvel Legend completely unique, right down to each body part. And in Series 1, they kind of nailed it, even though Toad wasn't really supposed to be part of the line. Even so, this is amazing. There were 2 variants in Series 1 of Marvel Legends, and they were both of Iron Man. The first one was a gold Iron Man that had, well, a gold paint job, and also the mask was a lot pointier on top than the regular Iron Man's mask was. This was recreating the proto-classic armor that Iron Man had. And I never saw this figure in stores. I don't remember ever seeing it. And, you know, it's kind of an unremarkable figure to me. To me, as soon as I saw, you know, the regular Iron Man figure, I figured, why do you want to have the gold one? The gold one isn't all that special. It's just gold and kind of harder to get. But I never saw this one in stores anyway, so I don't have much to say about it. It's just exactly the same figure with a pointier mask on top. Yeah. And then Stealth Iron Man, you know, I actually did see this one in stores, and I kind of regret not picking it up. It's an okay figure. I think that the blue paint job is pretty cool. It's exactly the same figure as Series 1 Iron Man, same details and everything. The only thing that's different are the paint job and the accents, and you can see that on Stealth Iron Man here there's a red accent on his chest and his hands and stuff, which kind of torpedoes the whole stealth aspect of him. Of course, by the time that you actually see those colors, I imagine you're a supervillain and you're in trouble. It would have been nice if for Stealth Iron Man they would have changed the comic book that came with the figure, but I have to imagine that would have been like a huge expense. You'd think that they would have included the first comic book that Stealth Iron Man showed up in, and that would have been a pretty nice bonus, I think, but obviously it probably costs a lot of money to print all these comics, so they didn't want to print an entire line of other comics just to go with one variant figure. Oh well. Again, my review from the basic Iron Man figure still stands. It's exactly the same figure.
Well guys, that's it for Marvel Legends Series 1. Really hope you enjoyed this something of an educational experience with a little bit of an introduction to Toy Biz and what they were doing, as well as an introduction to Marvel Legends. And next time, of course, we're going to look at Marvel Legends Series 2, the first time that I collected the entire line. Believe me, at the time, that was exciting. We're also going to talk about some of the older stuff that we mentioned earlier, like Toy Biz's DC Superheroes line and the Batman movie toy line. Boy, those were crazy times then. I won't get too far into it because those are fun stories, but we will talk about it. Anyway, guys, be sure you leave your comments down below and let me know if you like this. Hit like too if you like it, and if you support what I do, subscribe today. I'll be back soon with some more Marvel Legends talk, as well as some other toys, some action figures. I love these little guys. Anyway, until then, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.